Welcome to First Strike here on VSiN. I'm your host, Dave Ross. For the next hour, we're going to break down the UFC because it is back, which means we are back. Hopefully, everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. UFC took that week off. Hopefully, you got all of your food and festivities and family in, but now it's back to the other F. That's fighting. Beneil Dariush going to take on Arman Tsarukyan in a very intriguing lightweight main event matchup. To help break it down, we're going to have Nick Dais join me in studio here momentarily. Dan Vreeland, Reed Kuhn. But first, we go out to Arizona to catch up with our guy at Gamblu, is where you can find him on X. He is the one and only Lou Finocchiaro. He is the host of the Bout Business podcast. Lou, great to have you back. First of all, did you take a week off from handicapping, or did you? No, you were right back, nose right back in the books.
We're in an old saddle and you're challenged more than the other handicappers. You have to outwork them. And so I spend a lot of time doing this, but I did take time off. It was nice during that Thanksgiving holiday to be able to concentrate on some football and have a little bit of time off. But yeah, I'm really happy to be back in the grind. 3 cards left. Mm-hmm. And how long, Dave? Are we about a year or just over a year into the First Strike? I will say it's been a pleasure to be on this production with you guys. Our crew does such a good job of packaging us and making us look good. I just want to say thanks to them and you guys. Love being on and sharing fight thoughts each week.
Here, Rob Moreno, Britton Hess do a great job behind the glass each and every week. And to that end, 2 years now, Lou, we've been doing First Strike, if you can believe it now, over the 2-year anniversary. It's been a real pleasure, and I know Mom and Dad are back to have this show to watch and check out all of our guests today. Let's get to this main event because, you know, you look at Beneil Dariush, and he was actually, if you can believe this, favored over DuBronc's Charles Oliveira, and that didn't go well. Now he comes back against Arman Tsarukyan, and you look here and you go, wow, Dariush, over a $2 betting dog. Now, the age does strike people, I'm sure, when you look at the metrics here of a 34-year-old fighter in Dariush against a young guy in Tsarukyan. How do you measure this one out, Lou? Potentially 5-round main event here.
I'm fascinated by the line. This opened Tsarukyan minus 180 or 85 and stayed that way for a couple of weeks until about the 21st or 22nd, and then boom, right up to this 275 or better. So he's been attacked by some portion of the market. I can understand why. While Dariush is the taller, longer, more well-rounded fighter, I'll even say, you have to temper Dariush with what you saw in that last fight, a flop against Oliveira. But what most of the market hasn't gone back to realize is how good he looked against Gamrot getting there. So which Dariush are we going to get? Meanwhile, Tsarukyan, a short little fire plug, a little more singularly dimensioned in that he's a wrestler grappler. His fights aren't exciting. He smothers opponents and tries to gas them out. And I think in this fight, Dave, the fact that he's 27, Dariush is 35, I think that age difference is liable to come into play in this fight.
And again, once we get those populated numbers for the round totals, we're seeing 3.5s out there right now. Juice slightly, not tremendously. -30 is what I'm seeing here in DraftKings, Lou. Is this correlated for you that if you like the big favorite here in Tsarukyan, that you look at Arman and saying, all right, this is going to be a fight that goes over that total and that he takes Dariush into the championship rounds and just tries to wear on him, but maybe not be able to get him out of there via sub?
I think that's a fair question, and that really relies on how you view that performance against Charles in his last. Was that really Dariush as he is at 35, or was that a bad night for him? Is he more the Gamrot fighter? I haven't worked through that yet. I tend to think that this fight will get to that 3.5, get to those championship rounds. It's just how well Dariush is going to be able to weather the cardio storm that's going to come at him from the younger Armenian Tsarukyan.
Yeah, what's interesting, too, on the Dariush side, if you are backing the dog here, anybody out there, and you see that you can almost get, 3-1 almost here, over $2, obviously, as a betting underdog. But you can get him 6-1, either KO, TKO, or DQ. The same price associated with decision, to Lou's point about maybe this fight does go over. So not a lot of, the 10-1 in the sub feels like a long shot for the dog. So really only two pathways that you're possibly seeing. Could he get him with something with the KO, TKO, or DQ? Or can he somehow win a 5-round decision? Seems like a long task at hand for the underdog in Dariush. You know, Dana White didn't take a break either, Lou, during the holiday. He was out there announcing all these new fights because we got a lot of changes in the next couple weeks, including the co-main event in this one. Bobby Green was supposed to take on the Hangman Dan Hooker. He's out. So Jalen Turner, hops in on short notice. Very interesting here. And look at this, guy without really a full camp against the veteran and Bobby Green. We expect this fight to be standing for potentially 3 rounds. Lou, is Bobby Green going to put on another striking show at plus $1.85?
Some weeks ago, I came on here and completely overlooked, disrespected Bobby Green when he was fighting Dawson. I will not do that. Again, I will say for Green that he gets another long, lanky striker. It's not like he's going to a short fire hydrant, Kazakstani wrestler now. So he gets similar styles, but he gets a guy in Turner, lost his last 2, looking to bounce, had a difficult time making 155. This is short notice fight for Turner. He's had trouble making 155 in his last 2 fights. Very difficult to make any kind of firm commitment on this fight till we watch what Turner does on the scales. But I will say this, Bobby Green much would have rather fought Dan Hooker than Jalen Turner if this fight actually goes down.
Yeah, I'm picking up what you're putting down in that one for sure. It's fascinating in this card because it really is deep with some really big names on there. You've got Rob Font back in there against Davison Figueiredo. Figueiredo fighting somebody not named Brandon Moreno, which is going to be very interesting here. So you look at Figgy, and he is a small dog here at about plus $1.14 against another veteran here in Rob Font. What do you make of Boston's finest and Font? Do you think Figueiredo, again, can outwork him here at 135 pounds?
Yeah, and that's it right there, Dave, at 135 pounds. We've seen Figueiredo compete at 25, but he has a dickens of a time trying to make the weight. And I think that gives light into his mentality. I think he needs to be the bigger guy. I think he needs to be the bully of a fighter. And now he steps up against a guy that knows exactly what his MO is. And Font's going to go out and bully Figueiredo. Now, no longer will Figueiredo be the taller guy because he'll be giving away height to Font. He won't be the longer guy. He'll be giving away reach to Font. And it'll be interesting to see how he adapts to the 135. I imagine he'll fire fresh and look great, but for how long will he carry that? Font opened a degree or two higher than what he is now. The money's come in on Figueiredo. I think there's many reasons to like Rob Font in this fight.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, too. I'm surprised that the public's coming in on the smaller fighter here. We know of his pedigree, certainly championship pedigree at 25, but whole different story here. Juiced heavily to the over in this potential 3-round fight of a round and a half, but you look at those KO props, and if there's going to be a finish, maybe Figgy, you can see 5-1 there for him, but Rob, it's going to be standing, right? If you back the favorite, do you look to Rob maybe to be able to get the smaller fighter out of there?
Rob's got wrestling. He doesn't use it often, and with his size and reach advantage, I think he welcomes the stand-up fight. I think he'll back Figueiredo up after maybe a ferocious first round or so. Let Figueiredo taste a little of the weight of 135. But I think this is a tall task for Figueiredo. He has a lot to prove to me. Again, I regard him more mentally as the bully, and I think he's going to get bullied.
You know, speaking of the bully, Bilal Muhammad took care of Sean Brady when Sean Brady was really ascending up the ranks here, and now he's going to take on just Kelvin Gastelum. Again, you get this card. It's really deep here when you get to the main card, when you have this, like with still 3 other fights to go. And this is basically Brady, a small favorite at $1.18 against the veteran and Gastelum. Again, weight fluctuations for Kelvin throughout his career. This is a very intriguing fight to me. I don't know which version of which guy we get.
That's the intrigue of the fight. And again, another weight fight because Gastelum had a hard time making 70 younger. But let's remember, when Gastelum was younger, he was less disciplined. Now he's gone to 85, and look who he's competed with and how he's competed with them at 185. Now he goes to fight ready and is focused. If he's early on the scale, makes the weight with no problem, he's live. There's no question in my mind. Brady has septic or nose issues. And if you're going to have nose issues as a fighter, you better take out some insurance. I like Brady, but I think this is a really good spot for Gastelum, provided he makes the weight and looks healthy on Friday morning.
Yeah, if you've got issues here, you need to talk to DDP and figure out how he got them fixed, because that's been a problem for a lot of fighters. Very quickly, Lou, we got about 45 seconds to go. Tell them about the sneak teep and what you have on the About Business podcast.
Sneak Teep, we break down the lines for each week's fight card early in the week on Monday, and then by Friday, we've watched the weigh-ins and have our final picks and results. Those come out this week about noontime because the fights are Central Standard Time. Dave, thanks for having me on. Love the show and appreciate being on each week with you guys.
Man, it's just good to be back. That's what we take 1 week off. It feels like a year. There he is, everybody, the one and only Lou Finocchiaro. Give him a follow at GamLou and check out the About Business podcast. When we come back right here in studio, Nick Dais is next. Come on back. It's First Strike here on VSiN. Become a VSiN Pro subscriber today. Get a daily email recapping all the best bets from our show hosts and guests. You're going to get unlimited access to our VSiN.com/picks page. Sort those picks out by sport, matchup, event date, and more. Check the top VSiN experts leaderboard to view betting records, profit, ROI. See which VSiN expert has a current on hand. So for VSiN Pro picks, betting splits, betting guides, plus 24/7 video access, become a VSiN Pro subscriber today. Sign up through our Black Friday special now and get access to everything we do through May 1st for only $60 at VSiN.com/subscribe. Back here on First Strike, I am Dave Ross. What a pleasure it is to have in studio one and only Nick Dais. You can follow Nick as I do at Nick Dais 10. He's the host of the Veterans Minimum podcast. Kind enough to come in post-Thanksgiving. Nick, how are you, my friend?
Good. Let's pull the curtain back. A little late notice replacement.
I love
like
it.
Turner.
Like Jalen Turner hopping in for the co-main event. Here he is, everybody, in the flesh. Nick, I got to ask you, because I noticed, we don't have a lot of handicappers that also dabble in the sport themselves.
Yeah.
You do. You got a little scar there.
I got some battle wounds over here,
that.
ladies and gentlemen. I had to go get stitches, Dave, right before the holiday.
Who did you fight? Was that against John Jones or what was?
No, it was a head clash with one of the guys at the gym. Accidents happen.
Yeah.
But I will say now I do look a little tougher from base. I never got a standing ovation at the gym, but all the guys that actually fight were like, "You're a real man now," and I was like, you know what? I'll take what I can get.
Yeah, I had a couple of those from Paris Island, but they're not any of Battle Scars of Valor. I just got my ass kicked. Nick, let's get into a little bit with this main card because it is good to have the UFC back. And obviously, you look at the card, and it's actually a really sexy card from where I look at, right? After taking a week off and headlined by Dariush against Tsarukyan here. And you can understand why Arman is a fave. I'm a little surprised how big a favorite he's blown up to. And again, I think the betting community a lot of times, Nick, goes, what did I see last? And we saw Charles Oliveira du Bronx roll through Beneil Dariush in a matter of a round, and everybody goes, oh, Dariush is washed. So it's like we have this weird thing where we do the last thing that we saw. Is this getting out of hand a little bit with Dariush now plus 225?
This is the most ridiculous line in a very long time. Look, to pull the curtain back once again, I've coined Arman Tsarukyan from the first time I saw him take a short notice fight against Islam Makhachev as a future champ. He's 27 years old, still has a lot of miles on him left, where there are some other guys that might be 30, 31, like the Max Holloways, right? Like, how old is Max in MMA years?
Oh, my God.
But with Arman, I think this line is a little ridiculous. Now, it could be the case, and I hate doing this, but I think it's important in the handicap. Dariush could be washed. But this is a guy who is on an 8-fight winning streak, loses to Charles Oliveira, who a lot of people lose to Charles Oliveira.
I was going to say, where's the shame in that?
Yeah, and, you know, MMA math doesn't really make sense often, but these guys have a mutual opponent. One guy beat him, the other guy lost to him in Mateus Gamrot. And if you look at the strength of schedule, Dariush has fought the legitimate who's, top 5 guys, champions, former champions, title contenders, where Arman, every time he's been in a big spot, Dave, it's kind of laid an egg. And it was very conflicting. Some people thought he won the fight against Gamrot. Some people thought he lost. Again, split decision there. But I think this line is ridiculous. Can Arman go out there and starch him in 2 minutes? Yeah, absolutely capable of it. I still think he's a future champ. He is 27 years old. But I think this line is crazy. I have to bet Dariush just based off principle.
Yeah, and again, when you say starched, my question would be, can Arman get him out of there? Because, like, when I look at the DuBronx fight, right, Dariush is defending against Charles can do everything, right? We know what Arman wants to do. So you're going to have takedown defense early and hope that you can keep the fight standing. I got to think that's the best way for Dariush, who's obviously very well-rounded, but the strength of Arman is going to be getting this fight down to the ground. Does he have to worry about the hands with Arman because of what happened with Charles last time out?
No, I don't think he would have to worry. And also, Dariush is an amazing guy on the ground, too. So this is one of those fights where I think the longer it goes, it benefits both guys. Like, this is an amazing UFC matchmaking.
Yeah.
You know, a salute to you. This is an unbelievable fight. And I think that each guy has the other guy covered everywhere. There's no real, I always talk about path to victory when I come on the show. And I think this is a very, very close matchup. That's why, just based off principle, I have to take Dariush in this spot at plus 225.
No, you do, for those that don't follow you, and if you're not following Nick, what are you doing? It's a great follow on all the social media platforms. Little subathon sometimes, right? Do we see the potential? Because, again, we expect this fight to hit the ground. 10-1 for Dariush, 12-1 for Arman. Is there a potential for that, or is it more, if this fight, again, juiced to the over here, 3.5 rounds, propensity to go the distance and hit the cards?
Yeah, I think definitely. I would lean more so to the Dariush side because this is a guy who, in the jiu-jitsu community, he's competed at a very high level in jiu-jitsu only competitions, and he's won some of them too, like the Abu Dhabis of the world and IBJF and all those competitions. So I think Dariush by submission at 10-1. Yeah, I mean, you know me, Dave. I love me a submission prop. So
yeah,
why
you
not?
do. Yeah, why not? It's a pretty juicy one right there. Again, if this fight does get down to the ground. In the co-main event, you mentioned you're like Jalen Turner today, hopping in here, which we really appreciate. And I know the UFC appreciates it that Jalen Turner's going to do it with Dan the Hangman Hooker out. So he's going to step in against Bobby Green. And we know what this fight looks like it's going to be. It's going to be standing, right? So while in the main event we expect it to hit the ground, this one, potential 3-round matchup, we expect to see some banging going on here. Can the younger Jalen Turner, is that what he wants with Bobby Green? Because we know that's a Bobby Green fight if it's a stand-up fight.
Yeah, this fight, if it was on a full camp, I'd feel completely different. And I know that's like kind of stating the obvious, but I think Turner is an unbelievable fighter. I think he's the most unique fighter at 155. This dude looks like a middleweight.
He does.
The frame and the size of him is massive, and you know he's going to have the reach. He's going to have the height advantage over him too. The thing that I worry about here is Bobby Green is a lot more active. You know, he's coming off a big win over Grant Dawson, which, oh my God, talk about the money that I lost on that fight. I couldn't believe it. But, you know, Turner, I think Turner is a very dangerous fight for him coming in on short notice. He's a big 155er, and on short notice, I would be concerned about him maybe having a difficult weight cut. I think that's very important to kind of handicap here. And Bobby Green, he doesn't get enough credit, Dave, for the in-fight adjustments he makes, not in between rounds, because it's easy for me as a corner guy to tell you, look, he's doing this, he's doing that in that 1 minute that I have in between rounds, but he does them on the fly. And that's somewhere where I think he could kind of expose some of the issues that Turner has. This is a really wild fight. Another one where on a full camp I feel different. But I think I'm going to have to take Bobby Green on this one. Just ride this wave, the momentum that he has. He's more active. And, you know, Turner on the flip side, too, his losses have been to top 5, top 10 guys. He lost to Gamrot, split decision, and then he lost to Dan Hooker at a split decision back in July at Fight Week. So it is tough, man. But I think in both the co-main and the main, I have to take the dog just because I think the lines are mispriced.
I could talk with you all day about some of these fights, but I want to get your opinion on some of the other ones too, because it is such a deep main event, our main card here. Sean Brady, Kelvin Gastelum, talk about making weight. It's always been an issue for Kelvin here, and now he's back down to 170 against Brady, who everything was great until Bilal Muhammad kind of stopped the hype train there. What do you expect in this one?
I mean, I wish we could make bets on people to miss weight because a nice parlay of Turner and Gastelum would be plus money here. Look, I think you bring up a good point, right? Bilal Muhammad exposed Brady in a facet that's not Bilal's game, too. Like, just unbelievable on the feet, standing up, as a wrestler. And I think that there is a path to victory for Sean Brady here. I am on Sean Brady. Gastelum, I think coming back down to 170 is really weird because this guy's just a notorious weight misser.
Yeah.
And he's been in brawls. Like, this guy's 32 years old, but his body's probably 57. Yeah, like he's gone through hell and back in the UFC. And look, Sean Brady, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this once highly touted prospect, he was 5-0 in the UFC, then he runs up against Bilal Muhammad, and he got exposed. So let's see him now against Gastelum, a guy who he's been in there with the who's who too, like the strength of schedule. Like Gastelum is any time, any place, and we are hard on him for missing weight, but it's a really good matchup here once again, man. And this card is unbelievable with matchups like this too.
You got Boston Mafia back in there, Rob Font, right? He's going to take on Davison Figueiredo, and Figgy's going to go up in weight now from 25 to 35. And again, it's just odd not seeing him fight for a title at 25. Felt like he was doing that for year after year after year. And now to go up and make your 35 debut against Rob Font, very interesting here. Font's the small favorite. Is that justly priced?
I think so. And growing up, and I still am a big WWE wrestling fan, I think this is a loser leaves town match, in my opinion, right? If you look at it, one is 35, one is 36. 135 is unbelievable, Dave. Like, you look at the top 10 right now, and every single one of those guys could be champion. And if you're Figueiredo, you go up in the division. If you lose, you're going to want to fight your way back. I don't think so. So I think this one, the line is right. Look, Figueiredo was a big 125er. Now he's going to be a good size 135er, but also Rob Font is a big 135er too. And I think this is going to be a classic brawl. I do like one of my favorite props, and I know it's submissions, but Figueiredo by submission is definitely very, very intriguing. I think he has a clear advantage on the ground. We saw Sandhagen against Font just take him down at ease. And Sandhagen doesn't really attack the submissions like Figueiredo does. So plus 500, do not threaten me with a good time.
15 seconds ago. You hanging out with Mace and Cameron these days?
Yeah, those are my guys. It is what it is. The podcast, I edit and produce it. I do a lot of cool stuff, Dave. So I'm just out here doing the best I can.
He's just a cool guy. Now he's even cooler with a little shiner.
Yeah, I got some battle wounds too.
Ladies love that, Nick. Great stuff. Thanks for coming in, my man. Appreciate you as always. When we come back, we're shipping up to Boston next to catch up with Dan Vreeland. Come on back. It's First Strike here on VSiN. Before you make your next bet, be sure to visit VSiN.com. Check the current betting splits data. Want to know where the money and the bets are moving for every single game? Well, the betting splits page is updated with DraftKings odds every 5 minutes, so you see the changes and all the action. Find out where the public is betting based on the number of tickets and where the money doesn't match the public opinion. You can check out not just today's action, but future events as well. We are always improving our betting splits and recently added soccer betting splits from around the world. Betting splits are another way VSiN is here to make you a smarter, better year-round. Check out today's betting splits for every game at VSiN.com. Rolling on this edition of First Strike, Dave Ross here in Las Vegas. We ship up to Boston, catch up with our guy, Dan Vreeland. You can follow him at Gumby Vreeland. Dan, how was Thanksgiving break? I put break in air quotes. Did you take a break, or were you still nosing the books getting ready for this card and beyond?
So a little bit of nose in the books on this card and a little bit of interviewing international fighters. It's easier to get international fighters over breaks because they don't have Thanksgiving at the same time. So we might have some Australian and some Canadian flair on some of my future top turtles.
But yeah, isn't that funny that we are the only ones here? Yeah, we are the only one that give thanks. Nobody else does. I want to ask you, can you give us a little sneak peek into who you caught up with that really intrigued you?
Yeah, so I'm talking with Jamie Malarkey this week. It's one of the ones I'm really interested in. He's going to be fighting next weekend. And this is actually his fourth fight in a year, which he's never had more than 2 since he's come to the UFC. So that's it gives some insight onto that.
Let's get to our question we love to start off with, and that's the fight you can't wait to watch and the fight you can't wait to wager. And as you go up and down this card, it really is a solid welcome back card for the UFC.
Yeah, this is an amazing card. I could pick 7 or 8 that I'm really excited to see. But like kind of a sleeper one is Melky Costa versus Steve Garcia. It's 2 guys who just like don't know how to take a step backwards. They put their foot on the gas. They throw bombs. Both of them are insanely durable. Like, I'm not thrilled about the line in that fight because I thought it would be, pretty close to a pick'em or really close odds. And I'm seeing Melky Costa come in as a huge favorite. Might be a little value in there on Steve Garcia. But I think the real, fun in that one is just that like, they're going to throw. It's going to get wild, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And then my favorite one to bet, the line has gotten a little worse in the last couple of days, but Jamie Lynn Horth over Veronica Hardy. Veronica Hardy, a couple of days ago, this was a pick'em. Veronica Hardy even trended into being a favorite for a little bit. I know she looked so good in her last fight, right? Like she absolutely dominated that fight. But it was against Juliana Miller, who we've kind of talked about as just like, she's not been UFC level fighter, right? Like she made it to the UFC through the Ultimate Fighter, which had a lot of women who were, 2 fights, 3 fights, 5 fights, 6 fights. She fought a veteran and she got shown up by a veteran in Veronica Hardy. But I don't know that Veronica Hardy is better than Jamie Lynn Horth everywhere. Horth is, first of all, really physically strong, as she showed in that Haley Cowan fight. And that was up at 35. Now she comes back to 25 where she actually belongs. She's going to be an absolute powerhouse at that weight class.
Do you think that has the number gotten out of hand for you? Because I was looking at it, that's the first fight of the night. And in the last couple of days, it has ballooned a bit. Is $1.42 still playable in your estimation?
I think $1.42 is still playable. I think that one's playable up until like the 170s, 180s. Because, I just think I think she's got so much of a size advantage. I think, the fact that Hardy has been pretty much on the shelf. She's got 1 fight in the last 3 years or something like that. And it was against a 3-1 fighter, and not 3-1 in the UFC, 3-1 fighter, period. So, I think the experience advantage, the size advantage, the strength advantage, all that kind of stuff, she's playable, in my opinion, almost up until $2.
All right. I don't know if you had any cupcakes over the weekend for Thanksgiving, but I'm sure I had a lot of pie. But we got a cupcake back in there, staying with the women's theme here, and the former champ is back, Miesha Tate, against Julia Oliva. And right now, you look at Miesha, she's a solid dog, small dog here, plus $1.30. How do you handicap when you haven't seen a potential Hall of Fame fighter and somebody like Miesha Tate, women's MMA, and all that she's meant to the sport as a former champ, coming back at 37, but again, against a fighter in Julia who's about her same age at 35?
Yeah, not only her same age, but on a worse layoff, right? We haven't seen Avila in almost 2 years at this point in time. So she's also one of those ones that there's kind of question marks around like what she can still do, what she'll be able to do. And in addition to that, I've never really liked her takedown defense. I think Julia Avila looks really good on the feet. She's sharp, she's dangerous, particularly in the clinch. She throws nice elbows, nice knees. But you don't want to be in the clinch with Miesha Tate. Miesha Tate is going to move down to your hips. She's going to get a takedown. And we saw, Julia Avila, granted it is 2 years ago or maybe 3 years ago now, when she lost to Sajara Eubanks, kind of just getting bullied by a bigger and stronger fighter. Is Miesha Tate still that at her current age? I'm not sure, but at $1.30, I think she has enough ways to win and enough chance to like grind out a decision here that she's definitely worth it.
Yeah, that's interesting too, because I think you're picking it up. A very smart move there. The over is juiced heavily at 245, right? Miesha via decision, you're not getting that much more out of it. Plus $1.90 versus plus $1.30. Do you eschew the decision prop and then just take Miesha at plus $1.30 in case she catches her with something or it gets into a clinch and she goes for a sub, which is plus 750, as we all remember what she did to Holly Holm back in the day?
Yeah, I think she's going for submissions less and less as she ages. I think mostly just because she knows, her quickness, her strength is like kind of gone away a little bit. But with that being said, like an extra 60 on there, right?
Yeah.
Go from 130 to 190. It's not enough to tempt me and potentially ruin my day if she does catch a submission. So yeah, I think the money line's the smart play there.
Let's stay with former greats, if we will, in this on this card. And we got the Carpenter back in there. Clay Guida, Chicago's finest, against Joaquim Silva. Silva's a huge favorite. We understand that. 325 here. But when you look at Clay Guida, you know one thing is for sure. Unless you put him out, he's going to be there for 15 minutes. He's not going away. And sometimes that volume, whether it's, it's just perceived or not, he's going to be in your face. Is he a live dog at plus 260, or do you think Father Time finally at 41 is caught up?
I think against just about everybody in the lightweight division, Clay Guida's a live dog at plus 260. The guy, I mean, unless the guy is going to stuff his wrestling and try to slow down his pace, I don't know why you would think that plus 260 wouldn't be value on Clay Guida. And it's not like Joaquim Silva has been out there looking like a world beater. Granted, he had a really nice performance in his last fight. He showed up, it didn't win, but he showed up and he looked absolutely phenomenal against Arman Tsarukyan. But this is also a guy who got kind of bodied around by Jesse Ronson. And if you're getting bodied around by Jesse Ronson, who, I don't think of as having the pace and wrestling of Clay Guida, then why can't Clay Guida do it? And at plus 260, Clay Guida is always the type of person who can spoil something royally by shooting 700 takedowns and laying on top of somebody for 9 minutes and winning a decision. So with that pace and that grinding style, plus 260, yeah, gun to my head, I might pick Silva, but at that value, you can't deny Guida.
Again, such a deep card. I got to ask you about Jakar Close against Joe Solecki here. Close feels like one of those guys that sometimes he can look spectacular. Others you go, I'm not sure what that was. He is laying a small number here at $1.22 against Joe. What do you make of Jakar in the favorites role?
I like him here in the favorites role. I think he's actually probably one of the more undervalued people on this card. To your point, he's had moments where he's looked brilliant and he's had moments where he's looked not so good. But the fact of the matter is I don't imagine Joe Solecki is going to be the better wrestler here. He might be the better grappler in the grand scheme of things, but Klose is really good in the clinch. Klose is really good at stuffing takedowns, and he's very physically strong. If you match these two muscle for muscle against each other, Jakar Klose is going to win that one just about every single time. So I think Jakar Klose is going to be, the guy who dictates where this fight takes place. So if he likes it in the clinch, it's going to be in the clinch the whole time. If he likes it in the striking, it's going to be striking the whole time. And I really think he's going to find one of those avenues where he's better than Joe Solecki for most of this fight. So I think at negative 122, he's actually quite valuable.
Let's get to the main event in the couple of minutes that we have here. Beneil Dariush is a big dog. It's really ballooned here against Arman Tsarukyan here. You see Tsarukyan about 278 we're seeing right now. Dariush to come back over $2. What do you make of this? Is it the over is right now 3.5? Are we getting a long fight, or could we get some fireworks early and that under possibly be in play?
I think we could possibly get the under. And yeah, it does seem like the number is sort of getting out of hand a little bit too. But I have to be honest, I'm not really tempted at that number at Beneil Dariush. Maybe it's getting to dog or pass territory, but Arman Tsarukyan, I think, has every advantage in this fight, right? We know Beneil Dariush is super dangerous when it comes to jiu-jitsu, and I know he doesn't have the wrestling to go toe-to-toe with Tsarukyan because he didn't have the wrestling to go toe-to-toe with Matthew's Gamrot. Granted, he did continue to get back up, but Tsarukyan went toe-to-toe with Gamrot in the wrestling. So we're talking about, you can sort of put together a corollary there. If he couldn't wrestle with Gamrot, I don't think he'll be able to wrestle with Tsarukyan. Tsarukyan's also 8 times more dangerous on the feet than Gamrot, which we saw in that fight, right? Gamrot was able to sort of grind him and win the fight there, but if it just stayed on the feet, Tsarukyan was going to win that fight. So I think at the end of the day here, Tsarukyan just pieces him up on the feet. And really, the fact that Beneil Dariush was put on wobbly legs multiple times by Jakar Close, who hasn't been a big finisher in the UFC, I mean, that does give me cause for concern that this fight won't go to the over. So I do think there's probably some value there in the under.
All right, so maybe take a look at Arman and some under props if we think this is going to get finished very quickly, 15 seconds. Is it with the hands, or do you think he's looking for a sub if he gets this thing down to the ground?
I don't think anybody's subbing Beneil Dariush. Let's go with the hands for this one.
All right, let's go for the hands fight there. Dan, always great to have you on, my friend. Hopefully you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Always great to have your insight here on First Strike. When we come back, we're going to the nation's capital. Catch up with Reed Kuhn. That's next here, First Strike on VSiN. We continue First Strike here from Las Vegas as we go to our nation's capital to catch up with the one and only Reed Kuhn. You can follow Reed as I do at Fightnomics. He is the author of a book of the same name, and you see these numbers all across the industry. They were mostly generated by the aforementioned Reed Kuhn. Reed, great to have you back on post-Thanksgiving. And, you know, our producer, Britton Hess, during the break, as we get you, like, we'll pull behind the curtain a little bit, and he's like, Reed, did you have a UFC themed Thanksgiving? Because you do these incredible dinners for UFC Fight Night. And I was like, Britton, I mean, it's my question. It's what I want to ask Reed. Reed, we got to know, what was on the menu for Thanksgiving?
It was pretty traditional this year. We've gone non-traditional in the past, but it wasn't a UFC theme. There was definitely a gambling theme. Last year I did a menu with what NFL game we were watching and what the point spread was and which side we were rooting for. But this year, unfortunately, you might have a different opinion. Washington played Dallas, and it was a horrendous game. So it was one of those games you just kind of tune out and you focus on the family. Oh, no. It was one of the best games of the year. It's a no sweater. It was a beautiful 45-10 win. And I see Santa's getting drunk behind you on the shelf, which I really like. Reed, let's get to this card here. Welcome back to the UFC. And it really is a really deep card, as we've mentioned throughout the show today. And obviously, you're going to have a lot of fighters with a lot of volume for data that you've seen throughout the years. So I want to get to some of those. Let's start with the main event here with Arman Tsarukyan here in this main event. And again, Beneil Dariush, sometimes we're prisoners of the moment of what we saw last. It didn't look good the last time out. But I think this is where your system comes into play, where that's not going to really sway you, I don't believe, because you're going to put in that data. What do you make of Dariush now as over a $2 betting underdog? Well, first of all, this is definitely a grappler's delight. These are two of the highest performing wrestlers on the card. And when you look at just the grappling metrics, they are very similar. It's a very close call, back and forth. On the feet, I think the bigger deficiency is that Dariush is now pushing 35. He's been dropped 5 times. And Tsarukyan might have the sharper hands, or at least he might be landing more volume. I like how aggressive he is on the feet, and he can hold his own on the ground. So I think as long as he survives the early storm, I think he starts to pull away on the edge with significant strikes, just round over round. So I am supporting him. Now, I was supporting him early on when he was practically a pick'em favorite. Now the price skyrocketed. So I'm not sure what my final angle is going to be here. I may have to combine him with some sort of over. I don't think anyone's finishing the other guy pretty soon, in the first 2 rounds. So I might have to look at some of those props, maybe combine an angle here, Tsarukyan and an over of 2 rounds or over 3 rounds, hoping that he starts to get the edge and grind this out. Yeah, 3.5 is where it stands right now. Juice to that over, Reed, if you can get it to 3.5 rounds. And again, you mentioned the damage that Dariush has started to take and the numbers supporting that. Does that caution you against it, or do you just think, hey, even though Oliveira got him out early, this is still Beneil Dariush, more than likely this will hit to that over if Tsarukyan is the aggressive wrestler and has control, but not necessarily finishing potential on the ground? Yeah, it's not that Tsarukyan has really heavy hands. I mean, it's about average. In his fight time per strike landed against the head, he has a knockdown rate of just under 2%. That's a pretty average number. Dariush is kind of in the same ballpark, 2 to 3%. So neither one of these guys are like really heavy hitters. I think when you fight for a long enough time and people are worried about takedowns, you get an opportunity to find the chin. So that cancels each other out in this case. I think these guys are going to spend a lot of time in transition, in the clinch, trying to gain the upper hand. I don't think anybody's getting finished early. Reed, again, it's a really interesting card with some of the names on it and some of the matchups that Sean Shelby and the UFC have put together. One of those being Rob Font at 135, welcoming the former title holder at 125, Deiveson Figueiredo, to come up to this new weight class at 35. And Deiveson right now is a small dog here. We're seeing plus $1.14. Font is minus $1.35. Maybe a lean that your numbers are showing you here. And again, we've talked about this a lot, trying to factor in some of those variables like a weight change here. But what are the numbers showing you here on Deiveson? First of all, it's kind of weird where Figueiredo has spent the last 4 fights fighting the same guy. That is a lot of fight minutes. compiled in title fight environments against the best of the best. He's won some, lost some, a few up in the air. So here he is finally with a fresh opponent. And I think, if anything, the numbers might be a little more biased against Figueiredo because of that, because so much of that data over the last several years came from one guy, and that one guy is really good. Now, Rob Font has climbed his way into this position. I've been a backer of his for a long time. And first of all, I think this event, this card overall, but also this fight in particular, is going to be a barn burner. But Figueiredo cannot be discounted. His finishing ability with the hands and the submissions is so dangerous. You cannot count him out of a fight. And Rob Font, while he will be the busier striker, Figueiredo preys on people like that. He lulls them into coming forward, point striking, and then he hits way, way harder. His knockdown rate, before I told you two guys at 1%, 2%, 3%, he's at 7%.
Wow.
He is above the heavyweight average in terms of how quickly he knocks people down. And so Figueiredo is as dangerous as it gets in the smaller weight class. If I am going to pull on him, it's probably in a prop by finish, and I'm not sure which kind, but that's probably where I'm going. But currently at the money line, it's probably a pass for me.
That's fascinating because, again, what you're mentioning here, if Davison can get this done inside the distance, and that might be the safe way to go, it could be with the hands, but if he knocks down Font, let's say, he could just look for a choke and try to get him out of there that way, right? So there's multiple pathways if Figgy's power translates to 35.
Absolutely. Font has been dropped 5 times. He gets in those barn burner type fights. And yeah, he also is knocking people down, but I like the angle of Figueiredo as underdog. That's where I prefer to play him.
I want to take another look at the models maybe showing a lean, and Punahele Soriano is a big favorite here against Dustin Stoltzfus, and Stoltzfus right now is plus 220. Soriano is minus 270. Is this possibly a play on a Tuesday that the models are showing that maybe Soriano's too big a favorite?
Maybe. Yeah, I'm going to see where the price goes. First of all, we've seen a lot of price movements across the entire card over the last 2 weeks. I think whenever you have a week off, people start pulling a little bit earlier than they normally do. But you have a superior grappler in Stoltzfus. Soriano clearly has the upper hand on the hands, and this is at middleweight where the hands are probably going to dictate a little bit more often than they, more of the fight than they normally do. But we'll see. If Stoltzfus can get this to the ground, he does have a chance. If he doesn't, I think he gets picked apart on the feet. So maybe this is one where you take a prop angle where it's Stoltzfus by decision or by submission, but otherwise, back off. There's different combination of plays you can go here.
Let's go to what the models might be showing as one of the stronger plays in the board, and is a favorite here in Wellington Turman against Jared Gooden. And right now, Turman is minus $1.92. What are the numbers showing to support that number of almost $2?
Yeah, first of all, this is kind of a sloppy matchup. Both guys are showing hit or miss metrics. There's some good, bad, and ugly on the performance metrics. But if you have to look for the more glaring defensive holes, it's on the side of Gooden. He gets hit a lot on the feet, way too much, and doesn't put out enough volume to make up for that. So he's going to be running in an uphill battle on the feet. And then on the ground, his metrics have been pretty bad in terms of ground control. So Turman should have an advantage. He does have the credentials in grappling. And so I just feel like this one's stacked up for Turman. But I do admit this does look like a sloppier matchup.
Yeah, maybe not the most aesthetically pleasing to the eye matchup, but certainly the numbers supporting him as that bigger favorite. Jakar Close is a smaller favorite that we're seeing out there against Joe Solecki. Minus $1.22 as we're seeing right now. What do you make of Jakar now in this favorite spot? He's one of those intriguing fighters that we feel like he's kind of been on the cusp of breaking through, but still here on the preliminary card. Is Close a good value play at $1.22?
Well, first of all, you just mentioned how stacked is a card when you have a matchup between two guys combined for being 12-3 in the UFC, and they are buried down prelims. So yeah, these two guys have been flying under the radar. They're both very good, but I do think Solecki has gotten lucky with a lay and pray attitude. He's spent more time in ground control, arguably, than the guys in the main event, which is surprising. So he's gotten there and he holds ground position without doing a lot. And then you got Close, who has above average takedown defense. He's been against superior talent, I would argue, and he's actually held his own. So his only losses, first of all, his most recent loss in the last 5 years is actually against Dariush, who's fighting in the main event tonight on Saturday. So I actually like Close here. The numbers really do like him. And when I first looked at the matchup side to side, I wasn't really sure what it was. But then I dug into Solecki's background. yeah, he really relies on getting ground control. And if Close can defend those early takedowns, I think his hands are going to be sharper.
Only have 30 seconds. I feel like I'm shortchanging Miesha Tate, but she is back, the former champ, at 135 pounds, taking on Julia Avila. And we haven't seen both of these women in a while here. How do you wrap your head around a fight like this with a fighter of Tate's ilk, but yet we haven't seen her in forever?
Yeah, that doesn't bode well for relying on the data, because it just introduces this X factor. Are we going to see the same fighter that we've seen in the past? But remember, her original nickname was Takedown Tate, and she relied on wrestling, and that's what got her to the title. And lately, we just haven't seen as much of it. And if she gets into a stand-up knockout war with Avila on the feet, Avila is definitely the sharper striker, and so she's going to have the advantage.
Great stuff as always, Reed. Appreciate you. Thanks for watching First Strike here on VSiN.